The structured dating of the US can be a bit artificial to me. It does seem sometimes a bit like a job interview. I feel also behind this negativity is some kind of perfectionism that you have in France, where people feel they have to be experts at something before doing it. I go to meet his parents, all is good, we are having so much fun, they're amazing, everything goes so well. And I'm just, when are we eating?
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a second to thank you all for tuning into this podcast. These podcasts take so much work, so any of your support is much appreciated. If you have a second, please go and give it a follow and a 5 stars if you really enjoyed it. Now, back to the episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dating Beyond Borders podcast. It goes without saying that France is a country surrounded by countless stereotypes and romanticized notions. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a creator who is dedicated to revealing the true realities of living in France. We'll dive into what people often romanticize about France and discuss how much of it holds true, explore the highs and lows of living in this beautiful country, and cover all the nitty-gritty details you need to know before you visit or move here. So, welcome, Lucile.
Hi, welcome. Excited to be here.
So I stumbled upon your channel, I think it's been a month or 2 months ago, and I really like the content and I really like the authenticity with which you show these things, because I think it's true that France keeps on being the country that everybody romanticizes thanks to Emily in Paris. But even before that, right? Like we have this notion of France and especially Paris, which is where I think you live. You come to Paris and it's just going to be this city of love and lights and beauty. And is it quite like that?
It's not like that. So I do love, a good French movie. I love Emily in Paris. I love Ratatouille, Midnight in Paris, Amélie. There's so many of them, but it's just not real life. Real life is just, we are in a big city. So things are messy, noisy. There's trash on the ground. Just like in any normal big city. And sometimes people are really disappointed to hear that Paris doesn't live up to their dreams, I feel.
Is it true that Parisians can be rude?
Of course, we live in a big city, so people don't have time for you or anything you need from them. People have to go to work. People have to go to dates, to meet their friends, to do different things. So they don't really have time to spend talking to you. And that's where these stereotypes comes from as well. There's another reason as well for this stereotype is French politeness rules work a bit differently than in other places in the world. So one thing I say a lot in my videos is that sometimes, especially Americans, are used to different rules of politeness. In France, you have to start every interaction with saying hello to someone. Better if it's in French. If you say bonjour, people will already like you. But if you do not say hello, it is very bad. It means you're already disrespecting the person and they will hate you right from the bat.
Interesting. So when Americans come to Paris, do they not do that? Do they just say, hey, can I get this?
Yeah, they just skip the bonjour and they just say what they need. And to French people, this seems very, very rude. It's as if you were not treating the people who serve you as human beings, as if you were not recognizing that they're also humans like you. So of course, your service is going to be terrible after that. So just saying hello, smiling a normal amount will always get you further than just being very blunt and straight to the point.
Let's talk about French communication. I've heard that French people tend to be more critical, and it's because of the education system where you're taught to kind of criticize and discuss and debate.
Yes. Oh, yes. So I've lived in the US as well. And, my partner is from the US. He's from Chicago. And it is so different, the communication styles between the US and France. And I do like the positivity of the US. I'm a bit tired with the overall negativity, especially, back in the day when I was in the school system, you always told that you can do better. And, even if you get a really good grade, it's always, here's what you can do better. Here's how you can improve yourself. And sometimes you just don't need to know about that. You just want to think about the positive stuff. And I do feel that's also why we can be perceived as critical. Also, what's considered nice is different in the two countries. An example, I consider myself to be quite a positive person. I have a very positive outlook on life. But my American friends come to me for honest advice because they know I will be telling them the truth, because I've been raised to tell people the truth when they ask me. So if you ask someone, I don't know, does this dress make me look good? In France, it is okay to say no, and I'm going to help you pick a better one. Whereas in the US, you'll maybe try to sweeten the feedback a bit more, I feel.
So in a way, you're actually a better friend because you're telling someone the truth so they don't have to go out into the world looking like garbage, right? Yes. So if you say, oh, this is a great dress, this looks wonderful on you, or you don't have spinach in your teeth, then this person is going to go through the day.
Oh, yeah.
Not looking good.
Yes, that will be terrible for me if my friends were not able to make that type of feedback for me. Obviously, there's feedback and feedback. There's being critical for no reason, and it's just not enjoyable. But being honest with your friends and being able to make that type of feedback in a way that's still soft and positive is really important.
So did you find that difficult being in the US? Because interaction is very much on the positive at all times. And even when you give a critique, it's going around and around. They'll pile, it's like a sandwich, right? They'll pile it up with a lot of positives.
Feedback sandwich. I've researched the feedback sandwich, and I'm practicing this, especially when I used to have a corporate job in the US. So I was practicing the feedback sandwich all the time.
So for anybody that doesn't know, can you explain the feedback sandwich to us?
Yes. So it's a positive thing. When you're going to make a negative feedback to someone, let's say you're at work and you're working with someone and what they've sent you is not up to par with what you want, and you have to tell them to redo their work. So you'll start with something they've done well, the thing they need to change, and then another positive thing they've done to end on a positive note.
It's so interesting because I was reading a book it's called The Culture Map. And it talks about kind of business communication around the world. And it had a French girl that has moved to the US, I think. And when they asked her how well she did at work, she said, I think I'm doing really, really well. Well, in fact, she wasn't doing that well. It's just that the commentary was really positive. And then they had a vice versa, an American guy who went to France, and he said, I think I'm doing really badly because I get a lot of criticism. Well, he wasn't, right? It was a way that they brought it up without the whole sandwich part. So I think that's very interesting. And I always wonder if a lot of French people would maybe like to have a bit more positivity in terms of kind of like the North American style of communication. What do you think personally? How was it for you?
Personally, it's so, it's amazing to not be told what I do wrong all the time. I love it. I'm happy to live in denial on some things that don't matter. I don't need to improve myself on every single aspect of my life. I want to be comfortable doing some things badly and being fine with that. And I feel also behind this negativity is some kind of perfectionism that you have in France, where people feel they have to be experts at something before doing it. And I don't want that. I just want to enjoy the activities I'm doing, even if I'm bad at them, so that I can keep doing them.
Yeah, there's so much pressure if you have to be an expert at something before you do it, because shouldn't you be doing it enough and not being afraid of looking stupid before you can become an expert? So
exactly.
It closes doors to so many things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really feel this US mentality really helped me in my personal life of just doing things because I enjoy doing them and because I want to do them, and not because I'm only good at them.
So you feel that's kind of the French mentality is don't look stupid, don't look foolish, know what you're doing before you do it, and know the subject well before you say something on it.
Yes, I do feel, for example, in YouTube, people will maybe go to film school in France, or, know everything about how a camera works, and maybe be afraid to vlog in public because it is awkward to vlog. There's no way to do it without feeling awkward. And I do enjoy that in the US mentality, you can just do something and be fine with it.
So how long did you live in the US for?
So we lived in the US for around 2 years. And now since we're flexible in terms of schedule, we tend to spend a few months a year there every year.
Nice. And you lived in New York, right?
Yes, in New York. And my partner is from Chicago. So that's my experience is mostly these two places.
Yeah. And New York is known to be the more direct of the bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it wasn't that much of a culture shock in a way. But still, have you experienced any culture shocks living in the US, things that you liked or things that you didn't like?
Yes, I really enjoyed the work culture of having things, move really, really fast. That was something I enjoyed a lot because you're given responsibilities really fast. And if you don't do well, you won't get more opportunities, but at least, you get to try. Also in New York, you can do so many different things that are unique in terms of hobbies, in terms of, just personal development that I will have never done in France. One of the reasons I'm even on YouTube and I heard about YouTube is because I lived in New York. So I credit a lot of what I'm doing right now to that experience of living in New York.
That's interesting. Are there no French creators living in France?
Oh, no, there's so many of them, but it's less socially accepted, I would feel, than in the US, where the US is a very entrepreneurial country. So people try to do things and try to succeed at things. Whereas I feel in France, as we were saying before, people work in their little corner. And then when they're ready to show the world, they do.
So if you tell someone in France that you're a video creator, how do people react to that usually?
So it depends because, now people know about it. It's something that's very well known. So people are aware of it. But I think a lot of people will not think it's a job, will think it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Because it's not as well known, I'd say.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I can imagine that living in this kind of environment, like you can definitely feel a lot of pressure. I do think that maybe Americans, they're something that they're a bit too into themselves or too much out there, or, and I can imagine that's what French people think of Americans as well.
Yeah, the balance of that is sometimes in the US, people tell you they're the best at something and they're amazing and they've been doing that for so long and they're experts. And you're like, oh, great. Then please help me do that since you're an expert. And then you realize that they've maybe done it twice, that they're not experts at all. So, this enthusiasm, you have to cut through the noise as well.
Interesting. So your boyfriend is American?
Yes.
How did you guys meet?
Okay, it's a funny story. So we have been together for 8 years and we met on my last semester of college in Paris. And I was just coming back. I had taken a 6 months off to travel all throughout Asia. And I had used the website Couchsurfing, which is a hospitality exchange website where you stay at people's homes for free. They introduce you to their families. It's as if you were meeting a friend in another country. And I had the best experiences there. And when I came back to Paris, I was also going to host people. I want to give back to this really nice community. And I usually didn't host guys because, I don't know, I only stayed with women. It was more fun. There was like no weird vibes possible. It's just pure friendship. But no one was writing a nice message to me. And Bobby did. And he wrote a really nice message. And I was like, oh, I think this guy seems very fun and I'd like to host him. We have so much in common. And we often joke that we moved together on the first date because, we've always lived together from the day we met because I hosted him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you never actually dated. You just kind of went full blown into a relationship.
Yeah. And that's also a thing that's different between friends in the US and this. I have no personal experiences, just talking to my friends. In the US, it's a bit more structured. You go on dates and everything. Whereas, well, for us, we skipped a lot of steps, even for friends. But we knew we liked each other. We knew we wanted to be together. So we just decided we each got an apartment just in case we broke up. And we put one place on Airbnb and we slept at the other place the whole time. We just never used the two places.
That's smart. That's very smart. Did you notice any kind of cultural differences between the two of you? And I can imagine he's lived in France up to this point, so he's probably a bit of a hybrid. But was there anything that was either a little bit difficult to get used to, or any cultural misunderstandings that you had to deal with?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so many. So when you're in an international relationship, as you know, because you're doing this podcast, you have to communicate so much better, because things that are given in your culture are not a given in the other person's culture. So it's really important to retake the time to be super concrete about what you want to say. And I feel for us, one big thing was this communication thing on how we approach feedback and how we approach our feelings. And granted, I come from the south of France, where people are more expressive. When we're happy, we're more expressive about it. And where we're unhappy, it's also okay to express that. Whereas Bobby, coming from the Midwest, he's more reserved with his feelings. Yeah. So sometimes, I was a bit too much for him in terms of expressing my feelings. And that has been something I had to work on to be able to, stay myself, but just meet him where he could meet me as well.
Yeah, it's a great point that you mentioned he's from the Midwest, because it can be so different within the US as well, right?
Yes.
And yeah. So the first one was probably just that, right? Like the expressiveness.
Yes. Also the rules. There's so many rules in France that you cannot break. One is around meals. So this was a crazy big cultural difference for us. So I'm just going to tell you the US part, and then I'll tell you the French part, because it's, for Bobby, it was a big shock. But for me, I go to meet his parents. All is good. We are having so much fun. They're amazing. Everything goes so well. And I'm just, when are we eating? We haven't eaten today. I don't understand what's going on. I'm hungry, because in France, you eat breakfast, meal, and dinner at specific times with your family. You sit down to have a meal, and in the US, it's less structured. If you decide, everyone wants to eat dinner at 4 p.m., that's a thing that can happen. And I was just so confused. I was just like, I haven't eaten. What's going on? So it's way less structured than in France. And
so in France, you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And is it always at the same time?
Yes. All my life with my parents, I've eaten breakfast, lunch, and dinner when I was with them at the same time at the dinner table. All the plates are served on the table, and we've never eaten any meal separately.
So what are the times for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Yeah, so breakfast is whenever you wake up. So during the week, it's more structured. Maybe on the weekends, you wake, if you're younger, you wake up late, and older people wake up earlier, but you meet for a coffee at some point. Then lunch is between 12:30 and 1 p.m. And then dinner is between 7:30 and 8:30 as a start time.
Okay. So it's not so late. It's not Spanish time.
Oh no, in Spain, my family in Spain has whole different meal times. It starts at 2 p.m. for lunch, and dinner, sometimes can end at like 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's so interesting whenever I talk about cross-cultural couples, because you wouldn't think this would be an issue, but somehow it is, because people do eat dinner at a very different time. I always bring up Spain because I think it's an odd country out. Maybe Argentina is similar, but they do eat dinner very, very late. But in the US, I actually didn't know anything about food rules, because I would assume you're right, that there isn't anything really concrete that you abide to, that, you have to have dinner at this time. And okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And on the other side, so Bobby was used to a less structured environment. So for me, I was just starving, not understanding what was going on. But for him, he had to just adapt to all the rules. And there's so many rules on so the eating times, but also how to eat, how to cut certain foods like cheese, for example. And it's something that's just ingrained in the culture, and also how you're supposed to dress at the dinner table, like or lunch table. Like, for example, if you woke up late, you cannot go and have lunch in your PJs. all the older relatives or parents will be super shocked. And there's many small things like that he had to learn. And there's just so many of them that he's always discovering new rules of friends.
So even if you're having dinner with your family or lunch with your family, you still need to dress up to show respect.
Yes. So, for example, if you have a stain, one thing that happened to him, he had a stain on his pants, a small one. You know, he was dressed very normally. He's very polite and everything. But he had a small stain on his pants and he was, oh, it's no big deal. My parents asked him to get changed for lunch, which is not something, you know, US parents would do at all. So he had to get changed and be dressed differently.
That's very, very interesting. I actually had no idea, but I do know that French people have a lot of rules regarding food. And so when you see him, I suppose you cut the cheese or you don't cut the cheese. What's the rule?
So for each cheese, you have to cut it differently. So it's impossible. I fully understand. And also people will tell you, they will try to educate you on the rules. And it's always like, they're not criticizing you. They're always trying to be helpful, but it can come across as blunt, as we were saying before. For example, for oysters, it's, you never eat oysters unless you're a big oyster fan. But for me, I eat it max once a year. So of course, Bobby didn't know the rules about eating oysters. And he ate oysters wrong in front of my whole family. And everyone was like, oh no, you have to do this with your knife first. And it was like a big event of like how to teach him to eat oysters.
And then after he spent time with your family, did they sit around saying, oh, this guy is so uncouth? I mean, does he not know? Or did they give him a bit of a leeway because he's not from France?
No, they give him a bit of a leeway, and it's always trying to be helpful. We need to help him eat oysters. He's missing out. It's not like, oh, you're not doing it right. It's like, he's missing out on the right way of eating oysters that will elevate his life.
Interesting.
Which I don't find that very important, to be honest.
It's true. It's very interesting. I didn't know there was a right way to eat oysters, but now I know. I mean, at least if I'm with French people, I'll be really nervous to eat. But did he get annoyed about it, saying, "Let me just eat"?
So I think he's the kindest and more relaxed person ever. So he's just taking things as they are. And also we're both very well traveled. So we're used to being in different cultures and not knowing how to do things. And so he's very, very relaxed about that. And he always takes it as this is a new cultural thing I'm learning.
Interesting. Was there anything else? Any other kind of rules that?
Oh, there's so many. It just never ends in France. There's so many. There's so many little things. So we've talked about saying hi. There's also rules you're not supposed to always respect, so it's like you just can't follow them all. It's impossible for someone who has not been in the French society for a very, very long time to act in a way that is fully French, I feel. And it changed obviously from, friends group to parents to the age of people and the type of people you're with. So there's just so many. One that's funny is greetings. You've probably heard that we, in many other countries, we kiss to say hi. And that's a big thing for Americans. And that I remember the first time I went to the US, I didn't know people didn't kiss to say hi. So I tried kissing people. It didn't go well at all.
They probably thought you were hitting on them.
Oh, yes, 100%. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? And after a bit, because you're supposed to hug, but not, it's like this very specific type of hug, or like you shake hands or you just say hi. So that took some adapting when I first traveled to the US. So a really long time ago. I think I was maybe 18 or something when I discovered that.
Interesting. And to finish up this subject, was there anything else that you guys had that was not really an argument, but a culture clash?
Yes. Another culture clash, that's a positive one here. I think it's a cute one, is PDA. PDA is 100%. So we're not talking PDA like making out like crazy, but like holding hands and hugging and like kissing on the cheek or that type of stuff, between people who are together, who are in a relationship. It's very common to see people locking hands while walking in the streets in France, or just like stopping in the streets and kissing. And people are they show their affection to their person quite a lot. And in the US, we're considered for our friends a very affectionate couple, but for me, I find it normal.
Yeah, I definitely find French are a lot more affectionate, even, with texting, because like texting with French or, back when I did online dating, you see a difference with North American guys and French guys, because North American guys, I feel like they hold back, and I really want to get your perspective on the dating scene. They hold back a little bit, and they don't really, they're not as, let's say, open in their interest. Whereas I feel like French guys are typically, and I guess it does depend where they're from in France as well, but they'll use a lot more exclamations, a lot more, just a bit more spontaneous, it feels like. They're a bit less scared of not getting an interest back. Maybe that's my impression, and maybe because it was in English and not in French, it could be different. But I do feel like North American guys, they're worried that someone's not going to like them. And so it's that fear of rejection. So I definitely prefer communication with French guys because, yeah, you just feel a little bit of that fire, a little bit of that energy back and forth. And I think that's what makes it exciting before you do get on a date, is feeling like, oh, we're going to have playful banter, not just like, what do you do for work? And, very interview style questions on the other end.
Yes. Yeah, and relationship to work is really different between France and the US. 100%. For example, I don't speak about work with my French friends too much. A lot of my friends, I think, don't know what I do for work because we don't speak about work. And I don't know what they do for work. It's not lack of interest. We have other things to talk about. Whereas my American friends always ask me about work and are very involved in whatever I'm doing for work, which I find nice, but it's just two different mindsets.
Yes. And something that I heard about is that in France, maybe first dates, American style may seem a bit kind of scripted and a bit interview style, that people don't really like sitting in front of the person and just kind of asking these official questions. It feels very stiff.
Yes. So I do not have, my experience in dating is very, very old. So I've never been on a dating app or anything, because I've been with Bobby for 8 years, but I have a few single friends, and it's fun to hear about their dating experience. And I do feel this, the structured dating of the US can be a bit artificial to me. It does seem sometimes a bit like a job interview. And I wonder if it's the best way to get a feel for the person. I do not need to know everything about their life, like if they have siblings, what do they do for work, or, very structured questions. This will come up naturally in a conversation, I feel. Another thing that I find funny is people date many people at the same time. I'm so happy I'm not in the New York dating scene, because it seems exhausting keeping track of all this data about so many different people. It's not fun anymore. You don't really get to meet the person really. And that's something that as a French person, I do find a bit off-putting about the dating culture, at least in New York. Obviously, it's a big, big city, so people have many options.
Yeah, this is the point that comes up every single time I talk to a European person about dating, is they don't understand dating around. And personally, I can 100% relate. I've never dated around. I don't understand the concept. If I like someone, then I always say this, I don't have time, I don't have space for anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. And it just feels like a very pragmatic way to find love, I think. Yeah. It's almost like going out and going shopping and seeing what are the options that I can get and which one is better. And so that's something that I think in France, how does it work? I mean, typically.
Okay, so what I've seen that happens is often you're introduced to someone by friends. And granted, my experience is very old because I'm happily in a relationship for the past 8 years. But friend groups are a big thing. If you have a single friend, you're like, oh, who can I introduce them to? So, that I match my friends together. So your friends are playing matchmaker a bit with you and other single friends and trying to introduce you to people you already have something in common. So you don't need to know all the details because you potentially have a match with them. So it happens more organically. You meet, you see each other several times. Maybe you go on a drink to get a drink. Maybe you go for dinner, but it's less formal.
You go with the flow more, right? You
yes,
kind of
way more.
With a feeling. I have a feeling that in France, it's a little bit less about having certain labels, and it's more about just going with the feeling and saying, I like you, you like me, we have good chemistry, and let's see where that goes. As opposed to in the US, it's more about, I like you, but I don't want to show too much interest and just date you. And I want to keep my options open. What I liked as well was that you said it's not that important how many siblings you have or what you do for a job. Those are things that don't actually build attraction. Those are things that are just, okay, great, check. Like you don't even need to know someone's name in order to, these are things that are insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
I think a lot of times on these dating apps when people ask each other, what do you do for work? Like, that does nothing, because if you don't like the person, the amount of siblings they have, the job they do, maybe the job they do really matters for certain people, but that does nothing in actually seeing if you're compatible with a person and if you share the same values. So it's just, I feel like maybe chatter, useless chatter.
Yeah, I agree. And that I feel what attracted me to Bobby when we met is, even though we were from different cultures and had different life experiences, we shared the same values and the same things we want in life. And we're really a perfect match on all these, non-concrete things that you cannot really define, but that make the relationship.
Yeah. It's always great when you meet organically like this in person.
Yeah.
And you skip the dating.
Yes. Oh, God. Especially when we moved to New York, with our single friends there, I was like, oh my God, you guys are dating so many people. That seems exhausting. And also, the pressure to define the relationship. This I was not aware of before we moved to New York, but, having to say, okay, now we're boyfriend and girlfriend. It's official. And having to have this talk, is not something you do in France, we often joke with Bobby that we've never had the talk about whether we were a boyfriend or a girlfriend, because it's just happened. You don't need to ask the other person if they want to be with you. They're literally, in our case, we're living together, traveling together all the time. So there's no need to define anything because it's already defined in action.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about French women versus American women. Were there any differences that you've noticed between the two?
Yeah. So one thing I feel my American friends are way more put together than me. They're just like so good at like doing their makeup, at like looking like, put together with their hair and everything. And I'm just like, oof, I'm like, I tried today, but I look like this, how do you guys do it? So I've stopped trying because I'm like, there's no way I will get those skills. It's just not going to happen for me. But a lot of people are very, very, put together in their style, especially for dates. People really dress up, a lot. And that's, one big difference in the dating, the surface level. There's so many others, especially when we get in the topic of gender roles and everything. But that's, the first one.
So touching on the first one, because I do want to talk about gender roles.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I lived in Europe, and I remember coming back to Toronto and seeing women there and just having a bit of a reverse culture shock, because I had realized how much effort North American women put into how they look. It's very Instagram, let's say, based. So from curling their hair to bronze and just the right places and here, and like you put eyelashes, like fake eyelashes are a really big thing, which I'm not a fan. I think they look kind of dirty, but there's a huge effort on just looking perfectly put together. When you see women out at night, they're like, they really put in the work, and I'm on the same page as you. I'm just like, typically don't curl my hair or straighten my hair. I just I dry it in the sun. I like it.
Yeah. And, everyone is welcome to, if it makes anyone feel good to dress a certain way, I'm all here for it. And I think it's cool that people have those skills and, a lot of people enjoy doing their makeup or their hair and looking a certain way. So I'm not at all bashing that. I'm just saying even if I tried, I couldn't look like this because I do not have the skills it takes to look like this.
What's interesting? I'm now here in Montreal and I see such a difference even here because you see women are less focused on high heels and makeup and everything is just a little bit more chill and casual. So you see a difference even within obviously the Anglo and the Franco spheres.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting because I also find that there's a lot of talk about French women looking effortlessly sexy, right? And even then,
so I've heard, but
so you're just effortless.
That's not what I look like in the mirror in the morning. but
what's interesting is even watching French movies, that the choices of actresses are very different than the choices of actresses in American movies. Obviously, depending on the movie, Hollywood produces a ton of movies, but you often see older women with no work done on their face, with no makeup.
In Emily in Paris, the Sylvie character, she's awesome. She's super, super sexy and confident and so good looking, but also super natural.
Exactly. Like no bra. They'll walk around with no bra and that's considered sexy. Whereas I don't think you would ever see a North American woman without a bra in public. It's just not really done. So I think it's cool. I think it's cool that you get to be natural and older and maybe you don't have to do all this work in order to be accepted, because I'm originally from Russia and I see the extreme side of that with everything done to your face. And then after like 25, you really need to get a lot of work done because otherwise you're invisible in society, which with all the pluses and the minuses about the French culture, I think this is something kind of nice that you get to still be a woman in your 40s or 50s.
Yeah, that's something I really like. I think in a lot of different parts in Europe, but especially in France, that there's less pressure to look a certain way. I'm not a model. I'm not making money with my looks. So, if I feel good, and I don't bother anyone, then I'm good. And I feel that's a mindset a lot of people have. Obviously, there's a lot of internalized pressure, especially the pressure to be thin is very, very big in France compared to other countries. And it's, hurting people mentally, obviously. But there's less pressure on doing your makeup or your hair. I would say even there's a pressure to not do it too much, because if you try hard and you fail, then it's worse than not trying at all.
or does it make you look desperate as well? Does it make you look like, oh, she's trying really hard. She's very insecure. Huh? She did all this curling to her hair and she really wants to find a man. Or do people say that at all?
Not really, because I'm lucky to be, I'm sure, some parts of society in France say stuff like that, but I'm very lucky to be in a friend group. We've known each other since we were children. So since we were 10, and all my friends, I have known them for this 5 to 10 years, if more, So people are not very judgmental because there's this long-term mindset of, yes, maybe you don't like someone's face or what they're doing, but you'll still have to see them in 10 years. So you might as well be chill with whatever they're doing.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about gender roles. Yes. I know that's a thing.
Big topic. Big topic. So luckily in our relationship with Bobby, we are very untraditional people for that regard. And we started our relationship with talking a lot about what we wanted from the relationship. So I don't think that applies to us too much, because we're always questioning how we're doing things. We've chosen non-traditional careers, not traditional ways of living, and so on. So we have to talk about the things. I do feel the gender roles are pretty different in France and in the US. And I'd say that gender roles are stronger in the US, but it's also the way the society is structured. For example, one thing that I think a lot about, I've just had friends who just had a baby. I think about maternity leave and free childcare and free healthcare for pregnant women. This creates a different society structure. We have all that in France. So my friend didn't spend a single cent giving birth. It was free. She had people helping her that were paid for by the state. And in a few months, she'll be able to receive some kind of subsidy to get childcare. This creates an environment where she's never thinking about, can I afford to work? Is it worth it for me to work or not? It's not even a question. If she wants to stop working, she can, but there's no rational financially pushing her out of the workplace. And that creates different mindsets in terms of how we organize our life and also in terms of gender roles.
Interesting. So how does that translate to the dating then? So does that mean that you think American women almost need the man to take care of them financially?
So I don't think so, because all my friends in the US are very highly educated women who are doing great things and they don't need anyone to take care of them. But there is more of a pressure on society for the men to pay for stuff, I'd say.
No.
Especially in dating, especially on first dates or, the first few months of dating. So I do see my single friends in the US paying for more stuff. Whereas in France, I'd say people will do, invite me first, then I'll invite you if I want to see you again. It creates a constant imbalance. Once a person invites, then the other invites and so on. And it keeps the relationship reciprocal.
So then if you go on a date with a French guy and you expect that he's going to take you to a restaurant and pay the whole bill, is that something that French men think is too princess-like? Is that something that's not done?
So I don't think so, because, there's a lot of, many different types of French people. There's people who are more traditional and don't want you to pay for anything. But overall, I'd say that it's not a rule, but what will be done in that type of situation is if the two people like each other, if there's an attraction, one person, often the guy, is going to pay the bill. And then the other person is say, I'll invite you to my favorite restaurant next week. Then it keeps the relationship going.
Yeah, because I can imagine, I think in the US, of course, it depends as well. We have a lot more traditional places like Texas, Southern man. But also, I think there isn't more of an expectation that the man is going to keep taking you out, that he's going to take you to a restaurant, he's going to take you to a bar, he's going to take you here, he's going to take you there. And what you're saying is in France, he can still do that, but there's still an expectation that you're going to reciprocate. Otherwise, it's just not really going to work, right? Like it's still more of a partnership.
You have to treat the person. One thing I hate is the, I worked with a bit older people who say stuff like happy wife, happy life, and that type of stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate that. So every time I was saying something, I don't know, we're doing this with my boyfriend, he was like, happy wife, happy life, you decide everything. And your boyfriend just has to pay. Exactly. And I was like, no, happy everyone, happy life. We both need to be happy. And obviously, it's just a saying in everyday life, their feelings matter as well. But there is this rationale that you have to provide. And I could see that as well with these people who were a bit older than me when they were getting married. Instead of just saying congratulations, they were saying, now you can lose it all. Which means, you're married, you're putting your assets together and you're going to pay for everything for your wife. And that's not as much the case in France, because you have, this societal structure where you can choose which type of wedding, marriage you want. You can pull all your assets together. You can keep things separate. You can just mix a few things, but it's not a given that you're going to put everything together.
Yeah. Go back to Toronto versus Montreal. I completely, maybe to some people listening, they're going to say, why are you bringing this up? But I think it's interesting how the Anglo and the Franco can influence even here, because my friend and I had this conversation. She's from Quebec and she says it's pretty incredible because in Toronto, when a guy takes you out, he's going to take you out to a nice place, you're gonna get a cocktail, and like she actually prefers that. She says in Montreal, you go half and half for the most part. Or like he gets it. It's very laid back and casual, but also it's less about the gender role stuff, which is still super funny because it's not even France, but somehow there's quite a lot of French people, obviously, but still it's very similar in that way. And I've also heard that French women are very high in feminism. I don't know if you personally can relate or.
Yeah, I do relate. I think it's more of a given than, obviously if you're a woman, you have to be a you have to protect your rights. So otherwise no one is going to do it for you. But I do have two things to say around that. The second one will be about workplace rules and discrimination in the workplace and that type of stuff. But the first one is like more everyday life stuff. I think it's maybe more of a given in France. You don't have to define yourself as a feminist. You just have to think about how to, divide your chores more equally, or, that type of everyday decisions that are more talked about. I feel maybe in a couple.
And what about the workplace?
Yeah, the workplace is very different. I do enjoy the workplace in the US more because like there's very strict laws about what constitutes workplace harassment, what you can and cannot say to colleagues. In France, you can say sexist stuff to your colleagues and never get fired. You can comment on people's bodies. Obviously, people don't do it all the time. This is not Emily in Paris. In Emily in Paris, people hit on her all the time. That's not true. People don't hit on you, but you can have these like side comments that are sexist and they're okay. People will say, oh no, it was just a joke. Don't take it the wrong way, and nothing will be done. Whereas in the US, people are very strict about that, and you just cannot do that. And in the company I was working for, it was a French company that operated in the US. They had a training for French people on how not to harass their colleagues. Obviously, it was not called like that. It was called something way better, but it was, do not comment on people's bodies. Say, you have a nice dress, instead of saying this dress makes your figure look good. That type of stuff that shouldn't have to be explained in the workplace. You should not be talking about people's bodies in the workplace.
Do you get catcalled in Paris? Is that a thing?
It is a thing. I'd say it's not, like you can walk in this. Life is normal in Paris. It's not I'm walking in the street and people are stopping what they're doing to catcall me at all. That can happen. People will be maybe more forward about hitting on you in the street. So not catcalling is, I take it as an aggression, whereas hitting on people in the street is people can talk to you and ask you if you want to have a drink. That's totally okay for me.
Really? So do you get guys approaching you and saying, "Hey, I saw you. I want to."
Yeah, that does happen in France, but it's always done in a polite way. And if people want to try, they can try. But I'm not interested. So, but that happens. I feel more in France.
But I think that's wonderful, because I think in so many parts of the world, we stopped approaching each other because of, there's many movements that maybe men feel like, I don't want to be considered a creep or feel like harassing her, even though, as you said, if it's done in the right way, if you're polite and you're not too pushy, then no one's going to mind, right? But, or they fear rejection, or they don't even want to deal with rejection because they don't have to. They could just get on a dating app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel, it's very obvious who is a creep and who is not a creep. The intention. If your intention is to maybe get to know a person you've seen in the street a bit more because they seem interesting to you, that's a good intention. And, whether it's for, in the hopes to date that person or just to be friends, you should be talking to people if you want to. And it doesn't come off as creepy if it's done in a polite and kind way. Whereas catcalling or, harassing people, obviously it comes out as, it's very obvious what is what,
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely agree with you. Were there any other differences that you've noticed between French and Americans, either women or just in general?
Yes, one I love. It's a very cute one. I love how festive the US is. It's so fun. People are celebrating so many things, my boyfriend's family, they're the best. They have like the decorations for like 1st of July, Valentine's Day, Easter, all the holidays that exist. They do something cool for it. And also they have very cute dogs that also have little like costumes for each holiday. So it's the best. And I feel people are very, very festive in the US, and we've definitely taken that in our relationship with Bobby, and we try to celebrate things as much as possible. Whereas France, people are a bit less festive. They just celebrate big holidays, or if they're religious, they will celebrate that, but people are not doing Valentine's Day or that type of stuff.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's a shame because it's fun, but people just forget about that. I remember one year, I think Bobby was not here around Valentine's Day, so we didn't celebrate. And I met with friends, and we just were all, we're all in a relationship, but like we just don't, it's not very important. I think a lot of the holidays, like Halloween, for example, come from the US. So French people are like, this is not our holiday. It's not our thing. Can be seen a bit sometimes as too consumeristic. All the gift giving, for Christmas, you get more gifts if you're a US kid than a French kid, and so on. And the Easter bunny and all the, Halloween baskets and that type of stuff. They re-adopt, whereas in France, people are a bit less consumeristic on that type of stuff as well.
It's interesting too. I think Americans in general are just grand with their gestures, with everything, the tipping culture. They'll tip like 20, 25%.
Oh no, the tipping culture.
Yeah,
that's also a thing we can talk about. No, yes. I was trying to forget about it.
Yeah, it's really it has gotten quite bad in Canada as well. But I know in the US, it's 18% plus.
Yeah.
And yeah, what has your experience been with customer service?
So I tip 20%, and I feel like I'm like so generous, but I feel I also disappoint the server all the time. So it always makes me feel a bit bad because I'm like, I'm like tipping well. At least I think 20% is a good tip. At least from what I've been told, and I feel all people are always disappointed with your tip. So I do not really enjoy that because I'd rather my servers be paid a fair wage and not have to have this awkward moment at the end.
Yeah, 20% is definitely a great tip. And I think sometimes you get bullied into tipping more. I
know, with the iPads everywhere.
And the worst is like when you're going to get a coffee and you get a tip option on just getting a coffee. Like the only other option of me getting a coffee is me reaching behind the counter and making it myself. So I'm not sure if that constitutes proper customer service. Like I have to get a coffee somehow, right? So I think it's gotten to the point of extreme, and I'm also very much frustrated at this. In France, obviously, customer service is renowned for not being so great.
That's so true.
Tell us about that.
That is a thing we're famous for too.
Yes.
So it also comes back to, most people who have terrible experience in France didn't say hello or bonjour to the person. You have to treat your server like a human being. This is very important. You're not above them at all in France. You are equal, or you're a guest in their establishment. So you should act the way they're telling you to act. If they're telling you go to this table, you go to this table. So it's a bit different. The mindset is different. To very, very widely generalize, there's like the customer is king mentality. That's not a thing in France. You will get further in France if you want something done different, like if you want a better table at a restaurant, or if you want a refund, and it's not like 100% by the book. You'll get better result by being kind to the person and treating them like a human being. If you start yelling or making a scene, you will not get anywhere.
What are the things that you prefer about the American mindset, American lifestyle over French, and vice versa?
Yes, so that's a great question. And that's also one of the reasons why we travel so much between France and the US. I love both countries. I think, but every country has pros and cons, and it's so fun to get to discover the US culture better and better every year, like going to different states that are very different. We've been to Texas a few years ago, and it was so fun and so different from everything I knew. I think I've been to around 15 states by now, so I'm, slowly making my way there. But obviously my experience is mostly comparing Paris and New York. So the main things I really enjoy about the US is the work culture, getting after it. Anything is possible. If you have an idea, you're working on it right away. You're making a reality as soon as possible. You're not waiting for 10 years to be perfect. You're just doing it. And if you fail, that's fine. I love the positivity as well in the US. Obviously now I understand, the nuances of not everything is good. In the example we were talking before, the person who was only receiving good feedback, I'm able to see real positivity and fake positivity and cut through the noise.
No.
And I feel it's very nuanced. But I do love that people have a positive outlook on life. What else do I like a lot about these are like the two main things I've taken for myself that are big, that have changed my life. Obviously, there's so many small things, like what we were talking about, being festive and trying new things and that type of stuff. What I love about France that I feel the US lacks sometimes is we're such a small country. So when we meet people, we're going to see them again. It's not a question of if, it's when. We are going to see them again. So we're treating people like we're going to have a long-term relationship with them. And even if you don't like someone you meet at a party, you're still going to be polite, talk a bit to them. Maybe you'll like them better in 5 years if they change or if you change. But you're not cutting the relationship. You're keeping this community. So it does feel in a way that France is more of a community than Paris compared to New York is more of a community that you can keep for the long term. I really enjoy that about France. And I know Bobby really loves that as well, that you can go to any party, thing that people invite you to and feel comfortable in.
Anything about maybe food culture? I know even...
I was going to get into that. I love food. So often people tend to oppose, like all these TikToks that romanticize Europe. They go to the market. They're like, this is a tomato in Europe. And look at this tomato at Walmart. It's so bad, But yeah, obviously, if you go to a farmer's market in the south of Italy and if you go to Walmart in the middle of nowhere, yes, people are selecting things that match what they want to say. We do have a lot of laws surrounding food. So the food quality is pretty good, especially, bread. You have to there's a law around bread. You can only sell bread that has been made on the same day. And there's like many, many things like that.
Sorry, Lucile, also apparently cheese can actually kill you in France because there's no laws around cheese because the most important is that it tastes really good. So it can apparently it's not as safe because there's a lot more safety concerns in the US. So they don't allow a lot of things in. But I think the focus is that it's just very, very good cheese.
Yeah, it depends on what you consider safe. Like, raw meat is fine in France. People eat raw meat. I remember once Bobby accidentally posted a picture of me eating a steak, not medium rare. It was cooked, but it was very red inside. And people were very angry about it. But it's how, in Emily in Paris, she also has that issue. She has an undercooked steak. That's how we want our steaks in France. The meat is made differently to be eaten rare.
No.
But there's also the moldy cheese, which has never killed me. Maybe I don't know, research it, but I've never heard of someone dying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're maybe a bit more adventurous with food. I do love that the US, especially in New York, is so fun with all the international food it has, all the food options, all the diversity of authentic food you can find, and also all the fun foods. You know, I love going to Trader Joe's and trying many different products there. They're always coming up with new foods, which in France will take 10 years. You know, they're not going to do that really soon, I feel.
That's such a great point. You're so right. I think North America has a knack for taking things like export, import. It's a huge part of the culture, but also because you have so many different cultures and you have a lot of immigration. So you have, let's say, a French person that has arrived to the US and they're like, you know what, I'm going to take this French recipe and I'm going to do something different with it. Whereas like if you go back to Europe, people like tradition. And so they're not as willing to change things up, which can go either bad or good depending on what you like. I definitely like I think you can play around with things. It doesn't have to be set in stone forever. And also, as you said, Trader Joe's, like you can get some really crazy things there. But it's cool because like they've taken something and they're like, let's mix a bunch of ingredients together and create something completely. And it's good. It tastes great.
I love that. Yeah, I love Trader Joe's. I always ask my friends to bring me back Trader Joe's foods when they come to visit me in France.
Yeah, they have such a good variety, to be honest. And so I feel like people talk a lot about food in Europe. Oh, how great it is, how amazing. And I'm not denying that at all. Because of course in France, if you go to a lot of stores, you have some really delicatessen like type of things. And the quality is very, very good. But also there's something that comes with immigration and that creativity and that feeling of go for it and play around with it and don't be scared to change it up. That is also nice, right? Because then why does it have to be the same thing that I've eaten my whole life? Why can't it change a little bit?
And I feel this image of France is really linked to Paris. And, you know, French food is considered fancy around the world, especially in the US, but it's just not. It's just like normal things we eat every single day, but it's just the image Paris has, which makes something that's not fancy.
Yeah, it's good marketing.
Yes, France has a really good marketing, I feel. I
also have this theory that Italy has very, very good marketing.
Yes.
Because there are so many cuisines. But you know, there are so many cuisines around the world that people don't know much about, like Georgian food or...
I know, I was thinking about that. I love Georgian food. It's so good.
Nobody knows anything about Georgian food yet, or not so many people. I mean, compared to Italy. And I don't, in my opinion, I think it's equally good. It's just different. And so I think, like certain countries like Italy and France, I think it's the romance and the sophistication and the charm associated with it that kind of goes for the food as well. So France probably, as you said, like a bit more sophisticated. Like you're not just going to be like, hey, let's do takeout. Like let's do French takeout. I don't think anyone's ever said that.
Yeah, but there is like, you know, for example, crepes are the after party food. You know, they're not fancy. They're just like something you eat like with your family or after a party, or, you know, it's not something fancy. Or even champagne, you know, like it's something we do have at celebrations, but it's not considered fancy in France. It's just for special event.
And you have real champagne because the rest of the world typically doesn't, right?
Yeah, that's the joke. You know, it's like champagne only comes from the region of Champagne, but I feel you can enjoy any sparkling wine you want and whatever it's called. If you enjoy it, keep drinking it.
Yeah, I think you raised a great point about TikToks and how there is this big trend of comparing America and Europe nowadays. And it's always done in a way to build up Europe and to trash US. So they'll pick a place like near Walmart and they'll sit down at Applebee's and have some dinner and they'll be like, this is what eating out looks like in the US. And then they'll pick the center of the city in Europe. And of course, it's going to look really beautiful and scenic. Of course, there's truth to that. Like I totally agree that US, you have a lot more plazas and parking lots and bigger distances in many places. Of course, maybe not in New York.
But the nature is so beautiful. Like I've crossed the US by train a few years ago. And, you know, you have like so many massive natural scapes you won't see in Europe. You know, crossing the Rockies is so magical. And there is a strong culture depending on where you live in the US as well. And people sometimes especially on TikTok, you know, who are romanticizing Europe are not seeing that as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think, I don't know why this trend is happening. I get that a lot of Americans are maybe looking into Europe, but I think in a way idealizing it. And that's why I think what you're doing is cool because you are showing the realities of Paris and what it is like. And not necessarily killing the image that it is this amazing city, but just properly showing it to people who don't know.
Yeah, it's nice, we shouldn't. There's a lot of people who love bashing Paris, who are angry about Paris for whatever reason, because like there's trash on the ground. Of course, there's trash on the ground. Of course, the metro smells bad. Of course, people are not happy to go to work on a Monday morning, like everywhere. But some people love trashing Paris as well. And I really try to have a more balanced discussion of, yes, living in a big city is very annoying sometimes, but it's also fun. So we can just maybe find a middle ground and do things we actually enjoy doing.
Yeah. Well, Lucile, thank you so much for taking part in this podcast.
Of course.
It was
you.
Cool. I'm happy we got to connect. Yes. I really like your videos. I think you have something really interesting.
It was so fun talking to you.
Yeah, it was fun talking to you as well. Can you tell people where they can find you, your YouTube channel?
Yes, so you can just go to YouTube, and if you type Lucile, Lucile, and then Paris, like the city, you'll find my videos. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you can actually even just search Lucile and you get the channel right away. It's super easy, but I'm going to link to it. I'm going to link to all your socials below so people can go and check you out. Thank you so much, Lucile.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Have a great rest of the day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye. Take care.